This is an incredible panel. In fact, Erik, I referred to one of your LinkedIn posts earlier today. You had done a repost on an incredible technology where you can point and click on a still image and it generates a whole video from that still image, generative AI driven. So I don't know that this panel is exactly about that, but it's all cool. Enjoy, totally looking forward to it.
So that work is actually NeRFs, Gaussian splats, and the next generation of NeRFs coming out. So if you're looking at computer vision problems, there's some really exciting work right around the corner. And gonna have to shout out again to Pinar over there, who's doing some wonderful stuff as well, right up that alley. All right, so my name's Erik Weaver. I work for the ETC. It's a nonprofit think tank. We were founded about 30 years ago at the behest of George Lucas. Technically, it's part of the School of Cinematic Arts at USC, but all of our funding comes from the studios. I report directly to the CTOs of Disney, Warner Brothers, Universal, Paramount, Sony, Epic Game, Simon, who was in the room earlier, Microsoft, and a couple others. So we get to play with a lot of really amazing technology. And execute on it. So I've been in this field about 5-ish years or so, publishing papers and digging down to what's amazing and next. So I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves. Erik, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm Erik Hards. I am creative director for Lockheed Martin Space, just down the road in Sunnyvale here. I've been in the creative and the technical industry for about 30 years. Been on both sides, the production side, the technical side, and now I'm back on the creative side, doing creative direction for most of the productions we do at Space.
Sheiva?
I'm Sheiva Khalily. I am a virtual production supervisor. Currently working freelance, but I just spent just over 5 years at Lex Machina Consulting. I've worked on everything from corporate keynotes to esports broadcasts to feature films, and I've done some teaching in the XR space as well.
Hey, I'm Moran. I manage video production and people development at Google. I've been there for about 20 years. Over that time, I've built a lot of different production facilities for marketing, communications at YouTube. I've also built and managed teams, and then I've also been done quite a bit on the creative side.
I'm Chris Stackhouse. I'm with Goal Line Studios. I've been in prototyping and design for about 15 years, and I've been working in this field of digital stage and production for about 11 months, so kind of the baby here.
Well, this is a pretty new industry, so it's okay. Just got to jump right in here. The experts, again, are 5 years or less, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, Lex did some other stuff besides that, but still, it's about 5 years.
But it's about 5.
So the title of the panel is Dream to Screen. So I'd really like each of you to kind of tell me what is the dream of your organization with some of this technology. And Erik, I'll start off with you.
Yeah, so I think I'm about 4 months into this, so after my first production, so I'm, I guess, a baby from that technology perspective. But for us, we have a lot of environments that are either really expensive to shoot in, like I have to stop production in a clean room, or impossible to shoot in, like space.
Although you can't get a crew to the moon.
I said I would go, but they just won't send me.
Take me with you.
And so I'm looking at this as a way for us to shoot in either environments which are too difficult, too expensive, or impossible to shoot in. And specifically to put human beings in those shots. We have a tendency to say, oh, we'll do it in After Effects, we'll do it in Cinema 4D, we'll do it in one of the 3D programs because we can, but then we won't put humans in it because they don't work. So I think for us, that dream is to be able to show environments to our customers and to the people who are interested in the work that we do with actual people doing the work without destroying production or putting people in space.
Awesome, and I do understand a little bit of your suffering because I'm doing a shoot about Europa right now on the Sony stage, and we're trying to solve quite a few of those problems.
Like gravity, like how do we get rid of gravity? That's a problem, yeah.
Sheiva.
I love a puzzle. And I feel like every production is a puzzle and presents questions of how best to solve these various production challenges. And sometimes virtual production is the answer. Not always, but sometimes. And that's how I got here, and that's why I'm still here.
And I think that's a really important point. Some people think this is a solution to everything or a magic bullet, and it's absolutely not. It solves certain problems, and it solves them very well, or it doesn't, and you need to understand where you are or what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, it's not always the best solution just because it's the brightest and shiniest new toy. If it's not the right solution, it will overcomplicate your production.
If you look at something that is kind of the standard, which is Mandalorian is trying to solve a very specific problem, a main character with a mirror ball as a head. Just saying. Will?
In people development, I think, what we're trying to do is really drive, leadership excellence. We're trying to change the way people think about how they manage people. When new people come in, we're trying to, give them these orientation experiences that make them really feel a part of this very large organization. And especially during the pandemic, that became really challenging because everyone was, they're at home. They're looking, they're experiencing everything through these screens. And it really struck me that, they're already looking at medium shots 8 hours a day of talking heads. And if we kind of produce that from a video production perspective, it looks and feels exactly like everything they see all day. Why would I expect them to really engage with it? And so the dream of the LED wall was to come up with some kind of creative technology where I felt like we could, easily in a controlled environment, really step up the creative approach. So that when people clicked on, play and they started watching a video, I think the main challenge we have is that they don't feel like they know exactly what they're about to see and hear, right? That there's a little bit of surprise, there's a little bit of suspense. We're in a pretty tight box about what we can say and do, but I think within that box, I wanted to provide as much creativity as possible.
Awesome.
I think for us, what I liked coming into this was the idea that kind of what you talked about, Sheiva, it's not always the right answer for everything, but what we've learned, especially and what we really want to push, is transparency, pricing up front, honesty, helping each other save money, and work together as a community because we're all experiencing these new problems or solutions together, and really the ability to share it and have a place where people can go do that. So for me, that was the fun part, like she said, a challenge, but also it's been reassuring finding out everybody's having these challenges. So if we can really be sharing what we've learned and the benefits, that same attitude is how we came to how do we want to build these. Can we help each other? Can we network? And so for me, that's been the best part, is just watching the community learn to support each other and just kind of realize we're not really competing with each other. We're supposed to all be on the same team. And for me, that's been kind of the most fun part.
Yeah, that's a real challenge out there. It has kind of come from the Wild West to now somewhat of mild structure or the country town of sorts. And there are things like the contracts and consistency and what you're paying for and what you're getting and how high quality it is. But those contracts are not consistent in any particular way. I sit in a group called super boy band, I can't remember, Gaijin is what it's called. It's kind of a fun group where it's about 15 plus global stages, and they'll kind of meet once a month just to talk about things they're experiencing, challenges they're doing. They do not talk about pricing or money at all, so don't think there's any of that. But that's one of the things that they really talked about as a challenge, is setting some kind of standard pricing sheet. So getting to the dream, let's talk a little bit about experiences. So, Erik, do you want to talk about some of the experiences? You said that you did a shoot, what, about 4 months ago? Talk about how that went.
Yeah, actually it was super learning experience with walking in and understanding my only real exposure was Mandalorian. Knowing like, oh, I could shoot on other planets, that'd be really cool. But more importantly, that was the problem. The problem was, well, we don't really have people on other planets right now, and Lockheed Martin deals in reality. So what is my shot? Like, to your point, maybe it's not the tool I need, but was nice enough to be able to take advantage of the technology. So we actually approached it backwards, I think. We said, well, what is the right shot to use this technology? And so that actually got us to the point where, okay, first off, we have to have people in the shot. If I don't have people in the shot, I can do it in 3D, at least from what we're going to have to show, right? So I have to have people in the shot. And if I have people in the shot, what am I going to show? And that's kind of led us to these environments that I mentioned earlier that we can shoot in really expensively or not at all. And now I'm leading closer to what I'm actually going to use technology for. And so that actually was kind of eye-opening for us to be able to say, okay, we know the technology, we know how we're going to use it, so what shots do we need in order to make this particular project work?
And I'd like to go a little further with that. What was the most disappointing or thing that surprised you challenge-wise? Like what didn't work that you maybe thought would work, or just like, oh gosh, I wasn't ready for this at all?
Oh, that's a good one. One of the environments we were trying to create for one of the shots was actually a space station. And one of the things that was a little disappointing is there is limits to an LED wall. I can't create a space station. I wish I could. And so we had budget limitation issues about actually hard items in the space, to prove out the fact that it's not just an LED wall, that there are control surfaces for people to use, that there's desks, that there's chairs. And so actually bringing in those hard elements into it made it a fantastic shot, but we hadn't realized that when we were there. So there was a bit of a challenge trying to make it look real with just the wall, which was also a great surprise. They did some really weird stuff with the 3D that made it look like they were walking through hallways, which is really cool. But actually, physical hard items in the space are kind of a must to be able to carry that illusion across that we learned.
So to go back to the Mandalorian example, Mandalorian blended some of their environments. So they might have built half of a spaceship in physical there on the LED stage, and then the rest of it was being projected onto the walls. And that's very complex, and I don't recommend you go doing that. That's a bit much. But finding that great blend of what kind of practical objects helps sell your parallax is very, very valuable. The other thing that I think you pointed out was really important to me is you just got to do it. You've got to get your hands on it. You've got to experience it, because you might think some things are going to go great and they don't. You might think some things aren't going to go great and they go great. And the season 1 to 2, since somehow we keep going back to Mandalorian, is there's a radical difference in what they had to rotoscope, what they had to change between the 2 seasons, because they learned what they were doing, or they had an idea now how to either write or work it backwards, or how to set the scene up better so they knew it would work.
Yeah, I can't agree with that more. You don't know what you don't know, right? So now that I've gone through it, I've seen at least some possibilities. My creative mind just blew up, and now I'm trying to figure out how to spend more money.
Sheiva.
If you need help spending money, I'm here to support you. I love to talk about my favorite project is also the hardest project I've ever worked on. Maybe I just like the pain, but in fall of 2020, I did the League of Legends World Championships in Shanghai, which was an esports production for play-ins through semis that Riot Games had planned to take like a traveling show across many cities in China, and then the pandemic hit and they couldn't. So they decided to implement an XR stage. And so we did it on very short notice in peak pandemic time. The stage was an LED volume with 3 walls and an LED floor that was all being fed from Unreal Engine, with 4 tracked cameras doing live set extension with AR additions for a live broadcast event. So live content generation, live AR, live broadcast for, I think we had 270 hours of on-air time with 0 on-screen failures, emphasis on screen, several off-air failures, but none on-air, and there were so many challenges on that one, and it was just one puzzle after another with a group of very dedicated people who were just ready to experiment with some new cool toys. which is often a rarity to find in virtual production. We're working in an industry that has worked in a lot of ways the same way for decades. So to take a group of camera operators who have done productions for 30 years and are incredible at their job, and then tell them that, hey, what you're seeing when your camera isn't on air is going to be completely different than when we switch to your camera and your frustum appears, and just like break everyone's brain a little bit, and then throw in a new learning curve and ask them to figure it out. And there was a group of people who was very much willing to do so.
Yeah, you really want to find those people that are problem solvers, because this is a constantly evolving world. And they've got to be excited about the challenge like you are there to kind of push forward and figure it out. The other thing I'd like to say is live events are a whole nother level. People may not understand this, but it is real and now. And you have to have a solid team that can execute and gear that is up, which is different than producing a corporate video or something a little more kind. There's a whole spectrum of solutions when you look at virtual production, from things like on one side, which could be broadcast or live events, through to possibly corporate videos, ads, independent production, and eventually getting onto cinematic. And they all have really kind of different needs in both your hardware and your technology. And so you got to pay attention to some of that. All right, Will, I guess we're coming on to you next. So tell us about your experience.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, I hope you repeat the question, because I don't remember it. Yeah, my experience, it's been a really interesting time when I think about, and maybe you could disagree with this, but just philosophically, something to think about is when I think about the last 20 years of advancements we've made in video production and corporate video production. So much of it, it gets faster, it gets cheaper, the quality gets better, but the fundamental way of producing the content hasn't changed much, right? We're still using green screens and cycs and running out like small crews into cubicles and hallways and doing all kinds of stuff. The LED wall technology and filming people on an LED wall it's a completely different way of filming, right? Everything has to move to pre-production. And in the corporate world, it's mostly put together in post. It's like, here's a pretty rough idea of what we want, right? Get these executives together, get these people together. Here's a script. If we haven't locked it, do 3 versions, right? Or put it into teleprompter, and then slowly it kind of comes together. And that's not going to work with an LED wall. You kind of, especially if you really want to be creative, if you want to use it for what I said earlier, for what the dream was, right? Because what we've kind of been doing is we've really been, I think, dumbing it down to try to fit it into the mold of the old method of production. And it's not just the corporate partners that I work with; it's also the vendors. They've been doing production in a very specific way for a very long time. And to their credit, I could call, any of the vendors that we work with and just say, like, I have this crazy shoot that has to happen in like 48 hours, right? And just, it requires, snow and snakes in a box and all kinds of they'll find a way to get it done. Like, they'll call up people from LA, like, as long as you have the budget, they can make the magic happen. And then you go, oh, actually, we don't need any of that. I just need to get some images on an LED wall and do da-da-da-da-da. And all of a sudden you get this we haven't done that before. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is upskilling everybody, both the corporate partners we work with and the video production partners that we work with, to really get them to kind of understand this in advance. And I'm just going to throw this out there. If you're interested, we'd love to talk to you and work with you. We're interested in finding cinematographers and producers and people who know and understand and really want to embrace this new technology, because that's what we need, right, to really be creative. Because I don't want it to just be a replacement for a green screen. Right? I think we could do so much more. I think we'd be really creative. And especially in people development, I feel like we can change the way people act and the way they behave and really have an impact on people's lives within the company if we can tell these stories using this technology. So.
Awesome. Pass it on to you.
Well, I'm glad he said all that, so I don't have to. Yeah, I think the big thing I really like, and actually, I mean, my experience having only been LED from the production world so far is I like the live events. I enjoyed it because of the challenge. The corporate stuff being a little harder, which you nailed on the head, is getting to understand the amount that's actually pre-production now and what can or can't be done later. That's been the hardest part, is communicating that to people who just breaking their brain. That's hard. That's the hardest thing, is to get them to realize how much earlier certain decisions need made. And Erik, to what you said, working backwards, we've had clients come in from both spectrums, you know, the good, awesome person you're excited to work with, and they say, we've never done this before. And then they treat it in a way they've always done it before. And it just makes it hard. Long days, long nights. You know, recently we had a rendering team working 72 hours straight, trying to beam us everything from Florida for a 7 a.m. Monday. And it was an awesome opportunity to work with these guys. And on the flip side, on the good side, we had a small team a week later coming in, brand new product. Hey, we've not done this before, tell us what to do. And we just gave them a list of, this is what we've learned so far, you know, and it's all brand new. And they checked off every box on the list early, and the production was done early, under budget. And then we got to play with new tech. And again, that's my favorite part, but my favorite part has just been those challenges where it's like, you need to trust the guys on the tech. You need to trust the guys who tell you this is what you're gonna do. And when people listen, it's so much fun, and then I get to play. So like we've actually gone, now with some of our new volume pieces, we have a wall that can actually do this and float. And then the new software tech that's coming with that has been so exciting to play with, and a lot to learn. But getting the people that are willing to listen and do that prep and think about the prep being the really important part, that's been my favorite part, because those are the easiest. And for us, so far, the corporate ones are willing to look at the business of that ahead of time, and it's just fun. And that's, so yeah, I've had the opposite, but you guys have a lot more experience on the live stuff.
So I'm going to go back a little bit to Will's comments there. And what we had found traditionally, especially on the prep and the pre, going in the pre, is that you're basically, if you look at a Mandalorian style thing, they were doing something a year out, or prepping for something where they're developing scripts and scenes and building that vat or environment for a long time, right? You can't do that on a traditional production. You can't say, okay, yeah, we're going to be shooting over the next 4 months, but I need to start 10 months back to start this and get it going. And that's why someone like Kubrick and what the work they're doing is actually rather brilliant, is because they can change things, adjust things, create things now. And that works in the time of the filmmaker, which hasn't traditionally, worked into that. So that's really exciting to me. And I think also what you need to understand is there's a little bit of difference here. Building content in Unreal or completely in 3D versus building content in 2D, or as Pinar said again, 2.75. Which is a new one even to me, but I love it. So it's a fantastic experience to get to play with that. And have you guys all got to, what kind of content did you deal with? 2D, 3D? Well, I know you're going to do everything. I'll let you guys jump in on this one.
I like playing with all of it. I mean, 3D gives you the most flexibility, using something like Unreal to have 3D content and then track a camera to have a moving frustum and create that sense of perspective is absolutely beautiful, but it's not always necessary. And we go back to the idea that it's always about finding the right answer and not necessarily overcomplicating it. So for something like The Mandalorian, using 3D content was necessary to create that infinite world that we all want to see with something Star Wars. But for Bullet Train, which is a feature film that happens mostly on a train, when you're looking out a train window, you don't see things like parallax. You don't see that perspective shift as you turn your head or turn a camera, pan a camera, that's the word. So for that, 2D content is plenty, and that is all you need. And for that production, we just had LED walls on the side. We were using Disguise to play back a traditional media server to play back 2D content, and creating that effect of a train moving. And it felt very real when you were on it. So it's the most complicated isn't always the right answer. And then 2.5D falls in the middle. That's where you have multiple planes of 2D content and you're tracking where they are in perspective to each other. So this cuts down your need for 3D rendering, for something like Unreal Engine being involved. You can do this in a traditional media server, but you still need camera tracking.
So I like to point out a tool she talked about real quick. She talked about Disguise. Disguise is something that's especially well known for live events. If you need something that's bulletproof, you're going to be on air. Out there, I believe that they had, what was the company?
Pixara's out there.
Pixara's out there. That's a perfectly wonderful solution as well. You're not going to want to go into live broadcast with that, most likely, but it's another just wonderful solution at a completely different, more independent or executable tool stage. So you were mentioning earlier that you ran into new challenges around understanding things on the set, like, say, tracking inside out versus outside in.
Yeah, and thanks Disguise for that one. You guys are sitting here somewhere. I will say, as far as what we looked at for what to procure for the stage, we decided Disguise was the only way to go because of the different things. So it's live event space, it's commercial, it's 2.5D, 3D, with some of the new software and hardware coming out, and then just the size of our volume. It was, some of the other companies that are out there, they're more than you need. It's amazing. But when you introduce 30 million pixels, it's no longer an LED wall. Now it's like, oh no, who can even do this? One of the questions we had for Disguise when we first decided what to buy for the stage was, we're talking about camera tracking and what it means, and now mocap and Kubrick are included in Disguise. Well, which do we buy? Because they're not cheap, and you got to make it all work together. And learning which companies do both, and which companies are already the next step ahead. Not because you have to be at the cutting edge, which I think is something else we've all talked about. You don't need the best thing out there. What you need to do is find the best way to make what you have work together. And I think that's a big thing we all talked about on the side. That is the most important thing to learn is, you don't need that brand new Ferrari. You need that Corvette that drives when you get in it. And that's hard. But with Disguise, what we learned is how much it does. It's just, especially for the 3D and XR and AR world versus you can do things like at the stage on Sundays because of Joe's family, they play football for anybody who wants to come every Sunday. Nobody else figured out how to live stream 9 games simultaneously and click back and forth. And then it all switched to Roku this year. So we got to learn fast in about a week. It's the only one that can do it. Disguise had the ability to do it, but at the same time, there are simple shots where 2D is amazing. We just happen to fall in love with Disguise because of all it does for us. But yeah, the motion capture and camera tracking is fun. And there's more to that too that I think you played with at Lux, where you can actually be simultaneously filming different frame rates in Disguise.
There's a whole bunch of things I'd love to dig into here. That, set extensions, which you talked about. I'm getting close to the end, though. Do you want to say something real quick about any of those?
Set extension or ghost frame?
No. I think that is Jeremy from Megapixel in the audience? Because we love that hard work that he's done out there. That's amazing stuff.
I think he's outside somewhere, but essentially a ghost frame allows you to shoot multiple camera frustums on an LED wall at the same time. So instead of, with both your cameras capturing at 24 frames per second, if you're playing back your LED wall at 4 times that, you'd have 3 of the frames at one thing and 1 of the frames at another thing, and have your cameras capturing different frames. And the reason that you do it 3-to-1 instead of like a 1-to-1 or 2-to-2 or whatever, it's because if not, you might throw up. It basically creates a strobe.
Have you? It's like a really bad Wang Chung video. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that one where they give you the warning in front of it. Yeah, it's pretty hard.
You want to know how to make your actor sick? It's not good.
So I guess I'd like to say that right now where we're at in this industry or this field is we're at 2.0. We've pretty much switched from Pong to Pitfall in the video game analogy. If you look at this same analogy in terms of digital cinema, when we started off with digital cinema, I believe, and I've been lectured on this before, that the camera sensor was equal to about 1.3. And at the time, film was 4K. Roughly equivalent. I know there's some sympathy people who are going to crucify me afterwards. But anyways, so roughly. But look at where it is today. You're in a situation right now where this technology is going to radically begin to roll down the hill and gain momentum and do more and more and more. So it is worth your time to learn what your dream is and how to bring it to reality. Thank you so much for my panel. I thought it was a wonderful group, and have a wonderful time. If you want to learn a little bit more about this, there are 2 really great sessions coming up in one of the other things, SMPTE 2110, and then a wonderful lighting panel as well. Time up.